Hi, welcome to this week's Dragonblade Authors Unplugged. I'm so excited. We have Wren St. Clair and Elizabeth Heights with us this week. Ladies, thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Pleasure.
Hello, no problem.
So we actually have 4 releases this week. Anne Rollins has a new series out, Garden Folly Magic, which is book 1 in the Campion Club. And Karen Gerard has a book out that's The Doctor and the Duchess, which is book 3 in the Duke's Bastard series. So we'll catch up with them later on. I'll make sure I pop the link to those books in the comments so you can grab them if you haven't gotten them already. But the next 2 books that come out this week are also the Started series. And so we're going to start with Elizabeth's book, which is The Scott's Secret Love, and it's book 1 in the Sisters of Ember Hall. Can you tell us about that, Elizabeth?
Yep, sure, that's right. So my last Dragonblade book was Taming the Earl, and it featured the hero and heroine were Angus and Morwenna, who obviously got married and lived happily ever after. And The Sisters of Ember Hall is a series that follows the lives and loves of Angus and Morwenna's children. So anyone that has read Taming the Earl will find themselves immediately at home.
Second generation, I love that.
Yes, it's been so much fun. I've really loved writing it. I got to revisit Wolseley Castle, which was the scene of Taming the Earl. But the series is set a little bit further north of Wolseley Castle at a place called Ember Hall. Yeah, which you can probably guess. And there are 4 sisters and 2 brothers. So there's a book for each of the sisters, but the story of the brothers is very much intertwined as well to all 4 of the novels. So yeah, you really get to know this family, and a lot of the characters sort of reappear in all of the novels. So you're with them for a lovely long time.
Oh, I love that so much. That's one of my favorites, is revisiting favorite characters and getting to see the whole family together. And I love that.
That's it. Yeah. So we're not just saying goodbye when that novel ends. We're, getting to know them a few years down the line as well. So in The Scott's Secret Love, we've got a lot of my favorite tropes. We've got second chance romance. We've got the secret identity of a sort of undercover spy hero. And we've got the medieval borderlands conflict, which, there's so much material. That's perhaps not the right word, but it's such an interesting time of history. The Scottish and the English wars, lots to write about there. So just before the start of The Scott's Secret Love, something fairly momentous happens. So Frida, our heroine, who is the oldest daughter, the oldest child, she meets a wonderful man at a Yuletide ball at her parents' castle, and she falls in love. She falls head over heels in love with this guy, who is one of her toughest friends. And this makes her act quite out of character, because she's quite a sensible young woman. But her head is just turned, and she makes a foolish decision. And this ends badly, ends with her having a really bad fall from her horse, hitting her head, and very nearly dying.
Oh no!
Yeah, not good, really not good. So when she finally recovers, which is a really long process, she's quite a changed person. She's forgotten quite a lot of things. And she decides that actually she wants to live a much simpler life. So she goes and takes up residence in her mother's ancestral home, which is Ember Hall, which is really far north, surrounded by hills and countryside, not many people around at all. She's going to live there with her foster sister, Miri, and they're going to live this really simple life. And she's not interested in men. She's not going there again. She's learned that love makes fools of us all. So that's it for her. So Callum, which is the wonderful man she met at the Yuletide ball, he is half Highlander and half English, which makes him the perfect spy for Scotland. And what Frida doesn't know is that when she met Callum and fell in love with him, he was actually at Wolseley Castle under false pretenses. He was spying for Robert the Bruce. But that's not to say he didn't have feelings for Frida. obviously that made things a little bit complicated. And then he saw Frida have this terrible accident, and he thought, oh my. And he has also sort of turned his life around a little bit. He's really been hoping and working for peace between England and Scotland, which is difficult because he's got a very warmongering father. But anyway, Callum is trying his best. But then there is a terrible siege on his ancestral home in Scotland. So he thinks, right, okay, I need to take vengeance on the English, actually, who have wreaked all this destruction on my family home and all the villages that I knew, etc. So when he receives orders to ride south and infiltrate Ember Hall, this name means nothing to him at all. So off he goes with his bloodthirsty band of men. The last person he expects to find at Ember Hall is his lost love, Frida, the woman who he fell in love with,
yay!
who he actually thought was dead. So that's quite a meeting for both of them. But Callum he knows Frida's brother, so that's enough for him to gain entry. He quickly has to come up with a clever story about, why am I here? Frida appears to not know who he is, but that's not really true. That's just a sort of cloak that she's putting over her head because she really doesn't know how to handle this. And so, that's the scene, really. We've got Callum, who's an undercover spy, who really is in love with Frida, but he's with a group of men that are baying for blood. So he's got to choose between sort of true love and loyalty to his country. And then Frida, who has much more sort of personal conflicts because she decided that she's going to live this really simple life with no men. And now the man that she loved more than anyone has just come back on the scene. And we have snow, and we have blizzards, and we have family feuds, and lots of excitement.
And so much juicy conflict in there. There's just lots to get your teeth into. That sounds like so much fun. So very cool.
Of fun.
Yeah. And then we're getting the. You said there were 4 sisters, so we're getting 3 more books after this.
3 more books after this. So in October, it's The Lord's Reluctant Lady, which is the story of Mirabelle, who is the sort of the ward of the Earl of Wolsey. So she's not a biological sister, but she's grown up beside everyone. And then we've got The Earl's Indifferent Daughter, which I'm just working on the edits for now. That's coming out in January. And the last one is The Highlander's English Rose, which comes out in, I think, April next year.
Oh. Exciting. So we get a long time to spend with the family. I love that. Those are my favorites. Awesome. Well, the next book that comes out this week is Wren's book, and it's her Dragonblade debut, and it is An Inconvenient Marriage, book 1 in All for Love. Can you tell us about this one, Wren?
Yeah, absolutely. The premise for the series is that they're all twists on the convenient marriage kind of trope or forced marriage. So they're all things like that. An inconvenient marriage is, I like to liken the hero and heroine of this a little bit to Darcy and Elizabeth because they're a little bit like them in personality. The hero is a stuffy duke. He's very proud and not very... He's good at doing noblesse oblige, doing all the right things, but he's not very good at being letting his guard down, except with his family, where he's quite a different person. So he has trouble being the warm, friendly person he actually is underneath in public. So people don't see that side of him except the very close people who are close to him. He has set his sights on wanting to marry for love. And he's been looking for the right woman for a decade.
Oh wow!
And found her. So and now his father's died, and so basically his father wasn't very good with money, and he needs to marry money. So he's got himself into a situation where he has to give up his pursuit of love and find a woman who's got a decent dowry, and he. Gets introduced to a number of heiresses from this year's bunch of debutantes, and the one that he he becomes interested in is actually a vicar's daughter. She's actually only become an heiress very recently, and she actually has been in love with him for about 3 years, but he
Oh,
doesn't
wow.
even know he exists. So
Oh, goodness.
when he comes up to Maria Sefton brings him up to introduce him to her, she's actually hiding behind a pot plant reading a book, and she gets startled and drops the book and snatches off her glasses and is all embarrassed, and she's looking at him and it's like, it's him, and then anyway, he asks her to dance, and she's sort of she's discombobulated and stuff like that, sort of thinking, what's wrong with her,
Mhm.
Anyway, he asks her to dance, and she's like, she's actually quietly fuming. Well, you didn't ask me to dance when you met me last year, did you? Because he got
goodness.
formally introduced to her at
Mhm.
last year Max and didn't do anything about it. And he'd actually seen him. He'd actually seen her twice on 2 other occasions where he'd actually performed little acts of kindness for her. He'd got a book down off a shelf for her, and her umbrella got taken away in a storm, and he called a cab for her, a hackney carriage for her to see her home. All these things, and he didn't even remember her, and so she's really upset about that. So
Mhm.
the fact that he's taking notice of her now that she's actually got money is the other thing that's really peeved her off. So that's how they start off. So then it just goes from bad to worse for poor Robert, because basically every time he tries to do something, he's just wrong-footed with her every step of the way. So yeah, that's sort of the setup for it, and she's actually the eldest of 8 children, and so she's got a lot of siblings. He's the eldest of his family, and he's got 2 brothers and 3 sisters. So they're both the eldest of their large families, and they bond a lot over that. When he actually meets her family and all that, they start to actually really form a close
Nice.
relationship, and so then they actually get married, but at that point it's still haven't declared feelings for each other, but they're starting to sort of get closer, and then he continually stuffs things up. So he's always on the back foot with her. It's sort of, that's the whole story, really. Basically, there's a few complications, but I won't spoil them. But that's the kind of setup for it.
Oh,
Now, go on.
I love that idea, and I love it, especially since she fell for him first. That he then has to like figure out how to prove to her that he's not as backwards as he seems. No, I love that. I love that setup so much.
Yeah, so she really sort of gets over him and gets over the infatuation, and sort of decides she doesn't really want to marry him. But anyway, they end up being forced to get married, so they have to, and then things develop from there. But yeah, it's the series is the 4 books are Robert's the first hero, and then the other 3 heroes are friends of his, and we meet them in the first chapter because they're all sitting in White's having a drink, and he's lamenting the fact that he's got to marry some woman he doesn't even know yet for her money rather than for love. And so the 3 other heroes are all friends of his, for they've been friends since school. So they're very close, and they all appear in each other's stories. So you get to meet these men early on in the first book, and then each one then gets their own story as it goes through. So yeah, that's how the series unfolds. So book 2 is actually my personal favorite. It wrote itself. It's one of those books that just I wrote the first draft in 2 weeks, which is unheard of. I don't know how.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's amazing.
It gave me such a high. I was in love with the hero so much. I was on oxytocin. I was drunk on oxytocin. It was just wonderful. So the second book, the hero in the second book is a single dad. I have a total soft spot for single men, single fathers, and he's a bit of a teddy bear. He's not handsome like his other friends. They're all quite good looking. Robert's very good looking, and so are and so is Jerome, who's the hero in book 4. And the other two are a bit more quirky. So Emerus, who's the hero in book 2, he's got a dad bod. He's untidy and scruffy and all that sort of stuff, but he's so kind. He's such a nice. And yeah, so he's lovely. I just love him.
That sounds like so much fun. And I love in the first book, I love that the part that happens after the marriage, where they actually then fall in love and somebody has to jump first. Somebody has to be the one that says first that they have real feelings. And that's like that. Yeah. It's such a vulnerable moment in any story, but it seems like after they're already tied together, there's something that's even more, poignant about that moment.
Yeah.
I love arranged marriage books. So
yeah.
So awesome. Well, it sounds like so much fun.
Yeah.
So we still have a bit of time left. And I apologize for my camera. I'm not sure what happened, but I figured I was going to give people a stroke if I kept it on. So because it was flashing and flashing. So we still have a bit of time left. And Wren, this is the first time you and I have talked. Elizabeth, we've talked before. But I thought maybe we just start with the basics and talk a little bit about writing and since they are both new series, how do you come up with the series structure? How do you come up with the characters that are going to come under it? Do you do a lot of plotting ahead of time, or do you just get the characters you fall in love and ride the oxytocin high? Elizabeth, go ahead. Go ahead, Ben. If you know, go ahead.
Well, I'm not a pantser. I do plan, but I don't plan down to the last detail because that takes the fun out of it for me. I love the writing process is the bit I love the most. I get in flow and I'm happy, and if I can't write, I get grumpy. When things aren't working, it makes me grumpy. But yes, I get an idea. It's often the inciting incident, the starting point, and then I have to work out how I turn that into a full plot, because I don't have, and it took me ages to work out that, I'd come up with these wonderful ideas and I'd write for 20, 30, 40, even 40,000 words, and then suddenly come to a stop because I hadn't got enough of it.
Oh, no.
So I've overcome that now. I know how to sort of make it a full story, but I still find I often get in the middle of things and I've missed bits and I have to go back and plug it back in. I'm a linear writer. I have to have I have to do it in sequence. I can't write out of order because I'm kinesthetic, so I feel my character's emotions. So I'm not visual, so I don't see things in my head the same way a lot of writers do, I think, and that's why I'm not very good with descriptions. I have to really work at doing a description of something because it's not something that comes naturally to me. I feel the emotions and the reactions of the characters, and that's what if I see anything, that's what I see. I see their expressions and their feelings and all of that. So that's what gets on paper. Yeah. For me.
And to make sure that you would want to go on the linear journey with them, that you would want to go from one.
That's why I have to do the linear journey, because their emotions have got to come out of what's been happening to them. So if I jump ahead and then I finally get stuck because there's something missing and I've got to go back, I've got to backtrack and fill in the bit that I've missed, and then I can move forward. So that's kind of, that's the process for me.
Oh, that makes sense. It's so interesting. I haven't talked to anybody who feels the emotions instead of seeing the pictures. So that's fascinating. Elizabeth, what about you? How does your process work?
Similar, although I don't see the emotions, and I find that so interesting. Thank you for sharing that. But yeah, I'm also linear. I also plot things out, not in detail, but I have an overview of like the main points of the novel that I want to hit, and approximately sort of when I want to hit them. But then quite a lot creeps in, like, and it's almost, I almost feel like I'm reading the book rather than writing the book. So almost sometimes like, oh, I didn't know that was going to happen.
Isn't that the best feeling? Like, that's the best feeling when they surprise you, you know, and things just go, oh, that's why it's that way. Like, that's why that had to happen that way. It's like,
or you get some quirk in your head that, oh, this character needs to act in this way, and then, as you said, sort of later on in the book, you discover why he's doing that. I love that. The inspiration for this particular series came from a real life house that is not too far from us. It's called Haddon Hall, and it's beautiful. It's in Derbyshire, in England, and it's lauded as being the most perfect example of any house to survive from the Middle Ages. And it's lovely.
What's it called again?
Haddon Hall. So Haddon. And it's the sort of place, a lot of these grand country houses, you walk in and they're so grand that you can't really imagine the lives that went on inside those walls. But somehow with Haddon Hall, it's very beautiful and very grand, but you can still get a sense of the lives that must have gone on in the walls, hundreds of years ago. So that was my jumping off point. I thought, the family that lived here, who are they? What did they do? And then, I have the idea of like Wren said, the inciting incident and potentially the characters involved. And I use pen and paper and I jot things down. And quite often I have to rework that stage a few times because it doesn't quite gel. And then once I'm happy with it, I do more of a sort of full outline of all the different points that need to be hit. And then I write, and I feel like I've got a good roadmap for it.
Yeah, I develop my characters in quite a lot of depth. I do. I've got a very comprehensive character sheet that I use. It starts with their backstory and sort of the internal wound stuff. All of that. How do they get the problems that they've got to overcome that's going to stop them from being in love, all that sort of thing. I work all that out first, and then the things they've got to give up to get what they need, and rather than necessarily what they want. All that sort of stuff is worked out beforehand, and that gives the characters gravitas, gives them that emotional depth. That's essential for me. I can't write them because I need to, as I said, I need to feel them. I have to feel their emotions, and that's how I see them in my head. It's the kinesthetic thing. I don't know. I'm obviously fairly unusual. I don't know there's that many people who do it that way, but that's just how I am.
So for the series, when you both talked about the setups for the series and the characters that like the thing that ties the series together, do you get those characters first and then figure out who they need to be with to match up with those wounds, or do the mates to the series characters come to you at the same time? Is that more of a deliberate process, or do you get the couple together? I'm not sure if I'm saying that in a way that's
I'm just trying to think what I did with mine. I'm just kidding. They tend to come together fairly quickly with the situation. So the situation and the characters kind of, it's so interwoven. I don't know how to disentangle it to say one comes before the other, because they kind of all come in a bundle. To me, anyway. What about you, Elizabeth?
It's the same. Yeah, very, very similar. The character and the sort of main plot points generally come all at once, but sometimes they do need a little bit of fleshing out. So sometimes I might start with one idea, and then after I'm at my pen and paper stage and the writing of the lists and, what do they want and what do they need and what problems are they overcoming, all of that, then sometimes I do end up going in a slightly different direction. And sometimes that then makes me have a completely different image of usually the hero as well. So I'll start off thinking that he's one type of person and then actually develop him a little bit in a different direction. But 90% of all of it sort of comes all at once.
All at once.
Yeah.
You have to tease it out.
Tend to write. I love writing men. So I often think if I'll have more in his point of view than hers, without realizing it. So it's sort of just my preference. I love writing male point of view.
Oh, that's fascinating, because I find that
spicy bits.
I find that to be the hardest part. My writing buddy is really good at male voices, so it's one of the things where it's like I can send it off to her and say, and she'll say, "This is not how they think," and it's like, okay.
That's really interesting. That's a useful writing buddy, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I always envy people who get a male POV, like very clearly, because that's the part where sometimes I'll skip because I just don't understand them.
Yeah, I get the men usually more than the women.
Mhm.
I find that I quite often find the heroine harder to do than the
Oh
man.
wow. Hmm.
So I don't know why that is. It just
Yeah.
yeah. Um,
Elizabeth, do you have a preference one way or the other? Is there a part of the story that comes easier to you?
Not really. The part that comes most easily to me, which, yeah, it's a slightly different answer to the question, is dialogue. I love writing dialogue. And
Oh.
that sort of flows for me. And yeah, the sort of exposition-y bits that you have to write as if it's not exposition, really giving the backstory, etc. I find that hard. I always try and turn everything into dialogue if I can, because it keeps the pace going and it just comes more naturally to me. But I think with heroines, I'm not really a sort of girly girl, and I would never be able to write a heroine that was really in love with dresses, which is why I've so far been a little bit nervous of doing a Regency romance. Although I am starting to do one, so I'm getting over that. So I always have to make my heroines a little bit quirky, so that I've got a way in to understand them.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting that you said it that way, that you have a way in, because I think that is a lot of what it's like, is the getting into the character's head. You have to find a way that you can almost empathize your way into the character to be able to.
Yeah. Well, I find that I do get, like, for example, book 3, talking about quirky, that's why it popped in my head. The hero in that is an antiquity scholar. He's a giant redheaded fellow, tongue-tied around women, is in his head, wears glasses, got freckles, and really harsh features. So he's not approachable, all the rest of it. And he's despairing of ever finding a wife because he doesn't have any of the grace. He's an earl, but he, and so his friend Emrys suggests to him that he should advertise. Why don't you put an ad in one of your journals? So he does, and that's why book 3 is called Wife Wanted.
Oh goodness. Oh goodness.
So yes, and the heroine, of course, is an antiquity scholar as well, and she's a real blue stocking wallflower. But
fun.
she was one of the heiresses that Robert met in book 1. So she comes round in book 3, and those two together are just adorable. They just I don't know what happened. The chemistry between them was just gorgeous.
There is kind of that magic moment that it's like it's hard to explain how something that you created has a life of its own, and it
does, though, doesn't it? It just takes off.
It's like, yeah, and then you just get to hold on for the ride.
Yeah, exactly. These characters are just taken off, and they've just built this world in my head.
Yeah, that really happened to me for book 2 in this upcoming series, where a little bit, as you mentioned, Wren, my heroine was already in love with the hero, but he just saw her as a friend, and then she falls right out of love with him. And obviously that was what I plotted, and that was what I wanted to write, but I did not imagine that they would be quite so argumentative as they actually became. It really
Well, and dialogues in an argumentative couple, I think, are so much fun to write, because you can say the things, you have time to think of the things to say, the things that you would say if it were real life, and you never get there on time. It's like, it is very much a master of the universe kind of feeling.
Yeah.
So true.
Well, ladies, it's been delightful talking to you today. I really appreciate you taking the time. It was wonderful to hear about your new series and the first books in the series. I always get so excited when we get to start something new, and see all the, see the series unfold over a couple months. So I'm very excited about these. I'll make sure I put the links to the books in the comments, so you can get them along with the links to Anne's books and Karen's book. So you can grab them if you haven't gotten them already. I'll say my used card salesman spiel, because it's true every week that Dragonblade books are the best deal on pre-order and release. So you want to grab them when they're on pre-order. If you can't get them, then you can always read in Kindle Unlimited. So there's absolutely no reason not to spend your weekend reading. So, Ladies, thanks again for taking the time. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.